Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this session where we will be discussing sexual harassment in the media. We've already just had a presentation of a survey that was done by the Media Council of Kenya, which highlighted some of the ways in which people in the media suffer sexual harassment. Before us, we have a panel of 5. At the farthest end, we have gosh, I can't even see you. We have Robert Kitui. I like to do eye contact because when I can't see the person, I'm thinking they either can't see me or something. So we have Robert Kitui at the farthest end. He's a program officer at Article 19, Eastern Africa. Next to him, we have Rachel Ombaka, editor at Citizen TV on the website. We have next to Rachel, we have Quinta Mbori, is the president, Standard Group Women Network. Next to her, we have Dina Ondari, manager, accreditation and compliance at the Media Council of Kenya. And right next to me, we have Ken Bosire, who is a consultant editor and a media trainer. He actually has just been in a newsroom not too long ago, so he's very alive to some of these. And having had that kind of a senior position, I'm sure he got to hear some of the sexual harassment cases that were presented to him. I want to start off by asking our panelists to just give us some reactions or responses to the presentation that was made, where we were given some of the ways in which sexual harassment happens. Some of it comes in the form of jokes. Some of it is non-verbal contact, where people touch you inappropriately. Others were suggestions for sexual favors so that a person can progress in their career. Others, it's a date out so that your story gets to be published, and so on and so forth. So it's good for us to hear some of the reactions or responses from our panelists. And I will want to start from the middle. I will start with Quinta, who is a president of a Standard Group Women Network. Quinta, we'll start with you, and then we will pick it up from there. There's a microphone in front of you, which you need to use.
So thank you, Christine. Normally, I'm the last to speak, so today I'm quite surprised. And I always say maybe it's because my hair is red, so it's easy to pick me out. So regarding today's commemoration and the speeches that were made, even before I come to the topic of sexual harassment, what really struck me was the fact that most of the speakers today challenged media organizations to look inwards. And what better way, or what better time to look inwards than also assess the status of sexual harassment in media organizations, because it is one of those crimes that might not be physical, might not be visible, but the reality of the matter is that it does happen. So for me, I'm really excited that we are able to confront this crime, because it is a crime. Sexual harassment is criminal, that we're able to confront it at such a time, and that we have all stakeholders, speaking the same language. Like Marceline said, the axe is already on the tree. And I am confident that at the end of this panel, we will have made some stride in as far as beginning the process of chopping down that big tree that is sexual harassment. Thank you, Christine.
Thank you very much. We will move on to Kitui. Robert, I wonder what you have to say about sexual harassment, and probably you can bring in also the aspect of men suffering sexual harassment in the newsroom. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kristen. Just to react on the sessions that we just had in the main room, one key issue that comes out is that we're in a good time to discuss some of these issues. And like the rest have said, it's not just a violation or an act, but it's actually a human rights violation. So perhaps that is one of the things that we need to start, confronting right now. And for me, the sample may be, small, but it gives us a glimpse, of the frightening reality of what we face in the media industry. And the other question is that perhaps, we've talked about, whenever you hear about sexual harassment, what comes in your mind is that, of course, we know women are always, the most affected. But in the survey, actually, we realize that men have also suffered, The challenge is that sometimes they don't want to come out because, they will always hear that, you can handle it, these things are for women. So for me, I think that is one of the conversations that as we begin to have these sober, deliberations, we need to, ask ourselves, what roles are we playing at an individual level, but also as collectively, as in the industry. Thanks.
Thank you, Kitui. Thank you, Kitui. I want to come to Rachel Ombaka at Citizen TV. It's a real big media house with a very large number of men and women working in there. I don't know, first, your reactions to the report that was made, and then maybe you can give us some few insights into some of the things that you've come across. And maybe we can now begin the conversation about confronting this big reality in our newsrooms. Thank you.
On now? Okay, thank you, Christine. I want to pick from where Quinta talked about condemning vices in society. We as media are seen as safeguarding society in terms of culture, in terms of practices. And the Kenya Editors Guild president, Churchill Otieno, said there is no way we can condemn ills in our society and not condemn ills within our own newsroom. So for me, seeing journalists report about sexual harassment but not talk about it from their own workplace would be tantamount to hypocrisy. So I'm glad that this is part of the conversation that we're having today. I also like that interns was talked about in the report. In my experience, interns, particularly the ones who are not paid for the contribution they have in our organizations, bear the worst brunt of sexual harassment. And it's both female and male interns because they do not have money for lunch, they do not have money for transport. So you'll find that an editor will buy for them or will give them money for transport, but they will say, because I've done this for you, you best show me your thanks. And show me your thanks means sexual advances, things like that. And it's very difficult when you're in a place of power and you're telling someone, do this, and you expect the person who is below you to say no. So as much as sometimes we always like to say people should be empowered to say no, when you have a person in authority who is even able to give you a job, is able to connect you with networks across the industry, you feel like, let me just do what he wants today, because he might give me a job. He might connect me to someone who will give me a job. Something else I'd like to point out is the lack of confidentiality. In the media industry, we are talkers. We talk about issues. So you find that something as personal as this, someone will get the guts to go and report it, but within a few hours or the next day, it will be in the halls. People will know about it. So that's something that I've experienced personally. And it discourages people from talking about this thing, and yet it's something they live with every day. And also normalization. People come into the media industry and then they find that probably this is what happens at Nation, at Citizen, at Standard. So they're like, okay, let's go with the flow. So I think there's a very great need to break it and show people who are working currently and those who are incoming that it's not normal and should never be normal. In terms of insights, I'd be candid enough to say I've also experienced sexual harassment, and I didn't know what sexual harassment meant until I went through a program under Christine. She was my coach at a One IFRA program called Women in News. And you know how right now with COVID, there are billboards, there are signboards at our workplaces telling you wash your hands, wear masks. Until you verbalize, until you write down what something is, it's very rare that it will be internalized. So it's the same with sexual harassment. People don't know what it is. They might have an idea, but until it is verbalized and put up on a poster somewhere, whether it is in the office or at the HR's office, it doesn't become a thing. So that is when I knew what it was after I went through the training. And that is when I started becoming loud about it. So for me, I really want to say that we have to continue talking about it. Let it not end here, but let's make it something that we continuously talking about. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. I want to come closest to me and ask Ken Bosire for his reactions, his responses to the report at this point, and then we will move on from there.
Thanks, Christine. And first of all, I just want to mention that the report on, my reaction to the report on sexual harassment is very timely. It's a timely conversation that we need to have, that we had in silence. But now I think it's important for us, like we all saying, that it's time to introspect and see what kills us within. For me, what was disturbing about the report is what 50% of the sexual harassment victims are silent, would rather not talk about it. What I would call a conspiracy of silence, that you suffer, nobody else talks about it, and for fear of so many other things. But this conversation comes at a time, it ties in with what we already have, the violations that came through in the time of COVID, job losses, pay cuts. All these lend themselves to what we call, make people vulnerable to sexual harassment. If the person your supervisor is the one to decide who goes, people are likely to be vulnerable to that kind of person. And so it's a whole conversation that the two reports for me tie up. They increase the reason, they give us the need why we need to talk about this sexual harassment. And I see a bigger picture here, having been in a senior position, that we have what we call institutional conspiracy. The institutions have not gone out of their way to do more to eradicate what I think, in my view, is a career killer that goes just beyond killing careers, but it's also a deeply and psychologically traumatizing experience for anybody who goes through it. The institutions have paid lip service, and a lot of these things we're saying, lack of confidentiality, you don't want to speak about it, because you have nobody to go to. I just want to, Christine, I know you've been very, very upbeat about this conversation, but I just want to, that WINAF brought, when the program that you were running, when it came through a lot of media houses, in my place where I worked, there was a lot of resistance to adapt that report, because the first reaction was they were defensive. Have we been pointed out? Have we been pointed out as conspirators, as condoning this thing? So even when we held the meeting, I was part of that meeting, I found a lot of resistance. They're telling, is there something? So they were fearing first and foremost about their image, not how they would confront the situation as it was. And this has been very pervasive, especially for interns and in all manners, especially female interns. They fall prey to, some of them are known sex pests in the newsrooms. They will say that if you've come across this guy, is likely to ask for these data outs, it's likely to make snide remarks. Somebody will comment about your morphology, your body, how you look like. You're looking shapely, you've got this and this. All those deeply hurt, but because of the helplessness of the situation. This is a culture, and my experience was that I've handled interns when coming in. You tend to have this impression that this culture speaks to a wider society of, I can't get nothing for nothing, something for nothing. Where they're coming from, they already expect that they have to do something to stay ahead of the pack. That was what was worrying. And even when they are being pushed through for internship, you find even at the faculty level, some faculty members saying, if I want 5, but just put this on this list, priority list. Then you wonder, these are all your students. Why do you want so and so X, Y, Z to be prioritized? So I think it's a culture that begins out right from their training sports, speaks to society, the expectations in society. But what is encouraging is that we are now having to confront this, and we have to confront it to heal the messenger from within, because the external threats, they're obvious, we see them, but this that eats into our careers, that eats into our psychology, is what we need to confront. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's quite some insights coming from the panel. And now, if we have any responses that have come from the that is online, we would be happy to have some of those, and then I can voice them. But now I want us to look forward and ask ourselves the question, are we ready to be exposed as the media? Because if we're going to talk about sexual harassment and we are saying that it is happening in our newsrooms, in other words, we are just exposing ourselves and saying we've not done things the right way. So are we ready as the media to be exposed, to speak about it, and actually tell members of the public that this has happened, and if we are going to take any steps to it, if we are not going to take any steps to it, what we are going to do? Because remember, there is going to end up being some level of backlash. We are going to get reactions and responses from members of the public who will say, how could the media do this? But then we have a big elephant in the room, and we really must speak about it and speak about it now. If we are going to keep our profession as respectable and our profession respected even by the people we serve, which is members of the public, then by the time we get out and ask that society and the different professions respect sexuality and respect people and the kind of work they do, and not see them as male and female, or what we can get out of their maleness and what we can get out of their femaleness, then are we ready to confront that big elephant in the room called sexual harassment? Dina Ondari, before we move on, I want you to just give me some few reactions to the report that we just presented. I know you are part of the survey that was collecting these views, and maybe now it's time to just look at it and say, okay, what next? Dina?
Thank you so much, Christine. And it's a good point to start when you're asking what next, because I remember even when we were trying to share the questionnaires for the survey, someone even asked me, why are we even doing a survey? You know, this thing is so rampant that we don't even need a survey. You people should just start with action. But I was happy to engage her in the conversation, because I was telling her that policies and interventions are based on statistics. And so the first question I'm going to answer is that we have been able to put the numbers to the vice, because it has been treated as a rumor. You know, sexual harassment exists, it's so rampant, but nobody wants to put a finger on numbers. And I'm happy that Rachel spoke out, even willing to say that she has been a victim, because by doing this survey, we have been able to expose the various kinds of forms of sexual harassment, so that then even those people who have been going through it and they are not aware that their rights are being violated can come out and speak out, so that then we are able, you know, you cannot if someone gave you a gun in the dark, you'll just be shooting indiscriminately and you don't have a target. But when we have numbers, we have victims who can come out and say that I faced harassment from such and such a person or from such and such an office, then we can be able to target these interventions to prevent, to protect, and even to bring the perpetrators to justice. So the survey helps us to move forward in a manner that enables us to target the interventions to the right direction. And also, the big question about what next is for media houses. We have said that we are going to speak about this thing. We are going to embolden victims to speak, so that then they are exposed. It then poses a challenge to media houses to come out strongly and formulate policies to prevent, towards the prevention, to protect the victims of sexual harassment in their enterprises, and also to ensure that those victims get justice. And that is how we start cutting down the big tree that Quinta was talking about, because you don't start cutting a tree from the bottom, you start from the top, you start from below. And by the small steps that we make, such as this survey, then we are able to move forward. So I'm looking at a scenario where one day we will say we are able to point out perpetrators, to name them and shame them if that is what it comes to have them prosecuted in court. But first, it has to start with the victim. They need to have that courage to speak. And by doing the small things we are doing today, talking about it, coming up with numbers, giving them a protected space to speak, that is how we can move forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dina. I want to go to Rachel and ask Rachel, what was the response? You mentioned that you became very loud and you became a champion, and everybody now did not have much of a choice. They had to actually listen to you talking about sexual harassment and actually saying that we need to start naming it for what it is. It is a crime, it is a violation of human rights, but also saying that I have gone through it. I wonder, was there any stigma? And did you feel like, oh my goodness, I should not have talked about it at this time?
I like the question you've asked because it brings back those memories. First of all, when it happened to me, I was appalled as I had just come from maternity leave. And I was like, you know how a mother bear is, and she's always ready to attack if you try and harm her young ones. So I was in that mode, that state of mind of wanting not just to protect myself, but my babies, not my physical babies, but even in the newsroom. So I approached the perpetrator and made him aware of how appalled I was. And I was a bit curly, and he seemed not to have expected that, because I have realized over the past 1 year or two that perpetrators don't expect you to speak up against it. They're actually used to the victim feeling shy, feeling guilty, feeling ashamed. So for me, that experience really opened my eyes, and I was like, oh, so when you speak up and tell them off, it actually does something. And the person apologized. He's not my immediate boss, but he's a boss, but he apologized. But that was not enough for me. I was still very livid. So I went to the HR office and I told her what had happened. And she told me because the person had sent me a sexual text on WhatsApp, I should take a screenshot and send it to my email for record purposes. Because she said most people, most victims, for lack of a better word, most people who go through sexual harassment, they don't have a case because they don't have evidence. Probably they see a WhatsApp chat as just a WhatsApp chat, and that's already powerful evidence. So she told me the next time this happens, take a screenshot. It's not possible maybe to record one when he's talking, but because most of them hide behind the phone, they hide behind WhatsApp images, nudes, and things like that. Take a screenshot or take someone else's, or send it to someone else. Just make sure someone else knows about it. So that really helped me. And then I was also, I got the name of cock blocker because I started speaking about it, because I saw it happen not just to me, it would happen to anchors, it would happen to interns. And then they had, you know, the way I was talking about, you go and tell HR something and tomorrow everyone knows about it. So the next day, everyone knew what had happened to Rachel. So I got the term cock blocker, but also the women who were suffering in silence, they were like, Rachel, how did you do it? And for me, having a senior anchor come and ask me, Rachel, how did you do it? It broke my heart. Because you've been in the industry for what? 5, 10, 15 years, and you don't know how to deal with sexual harassment. It's an issue, and it's a serious issue. Because this particular anchor stopped coming to work in the newsroom. There are some of them who will come, want to edit their stories. She stopped. She would go to her boss's office and edit from there. And that's not right. You should feel safe to work where you're supposed to work. So I approached one of our directors and asked him, what do I do? Because I didn't know how to deal with an anchor. I knew what to do for myself, but for me, I was like, should I approach this person she has told me about, or should I empower her? I wasn't sure. So I remember talking to Christine as well and talking to this director I've talked about, and they advised me that male journalists, or let's just say men in our society, they respect, they hear admonition from, see me as a woman. He will hear me as a woman with my soft voice. And the next day he continued doing what he's doing. But if it comes from an authoritative figure, he will stop. And he did stop. My director went and had a chat with him. And afterwards he came and told me, Rachel, I've talked to this person. This is not acceptable. So this person stopped. And a few months later, the lady felt safe enough to come and work from the newsroom. So I also think it's very important that even as we fight together as women, we involve men as well, those who can be our allies. I know that it's difficult, you know, for men, because men are supposed to be macho, or they've been conditioned, you know, brought up in a society where they're not supposed to essentially fight for women. But there are those who, it doesn't matter. They'll do it because you're a human being, not because of a woman. So we need to identify the feminists among us, you know, who can speak against this thing. But also at the same time, I really want to talk about sexual harassment policies that gather dust in our HR offices, because you'll do a survey, yes, and then you'll find that the media houses do indeed have policies, but no one knows about these policies. Me, I didn't know about it when I started my job at Citizen. We don't know. And yet it is a crime that is punishable by law. So if management is held accountable, are you implementing this policy that you claim to be having? I think it will be dealt with as a serious issue, because if theft is dealt with, if content theft is dealt with, you know, all these things are crimes. So sexual harassment should be dealt with in a serious way as other crimes are dealt with. And finally, lip service. I think the only way we can deal with lip service is for us to see something happening to these people we are calling perpetrators. Because we can't just say we're going to win them, we're going to do this and that, but something needs to happen. Whether it is losing jobs, whether it's instigating a case against them and publicizing that case, even if it's one of our own, but it will send a message, you know? It will send a message that we don't condone this particular vice. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's quite insightful, and even to see some of the approaches. I would say you are one of those daring ones. I want to ask Kitui, what do you think about some of these approaches that, you know, we want to, you know, dare ourselves and even just trust ourselves as the media to take in order to begin the process of accepting this and actually rooting it out of our newsrooms? Thank you.
Thank you so much. I mean, one of the ways, and from the survey, is that we do not have, you know, reporting procedures. We may have policies, yes, in place, but we do not have reporting procedures. So basically that means most of the victims may not be able to report some of these issues because they don't know where to go. And in the case of Rachel, yes, we might have had, policies in place, but how do you then, move from what you are experiencing to make it, known to the office, for example, that is in charge of that? But also the other interesting part is that in most of our media houses, while human resource is supposed to be the one, responsible for, receiving some of these cases, perpetrators are specifically, from those human resource spaces. So how do you then, move to report such cases? So for me, I think the approaches are good, but perhaps we also need to go another level where we now start, requiring that any media house that, condones, some of these violations will be held, responsible for the employees who are, are violated. Because as I mentioned, if we make this, violation as a human rights, which undermines even the efforts that we are making for gender equality, then perhaps it will start sending a very strong, sound or warning that, if a media house allows, or do not address some of these sexual harassment, just like any other organization in the world, there will be laws that, will be, applied to that specific media house for, not addressing some of these sexual harassment within their media houses.
Thank you very much, Kitui. I think that's now bringing in even other stakeholders in terms of developing some of these legal processes for us to be able to actually tackle it. Much as there is a Sexual Offences Act, maybe we need to also make it alive, give it a life inside of our own newsrooms. I want to go to Quinta. Quinta, you started something called Standard Group Women Network. Yes. What was that about? Because I have every reason to believe that there must have been something that was really driving you, and it could have had an aspect of sexual harassment. And just before you go, I would like to invite the people who have joined this panel online to raise your hand. There's a small icon there. You can raise your hand so that we can also give you an opportunity to pose questions, to give us some of your views as we proceed with this discussion. So Quinta?
Thank you, Christine. I get very excited when I'm asked to talk about Standard Group Women Network. Yeah, because of the benefits that we've been able to achieve from running such a network in our organization. So in October 2018, Standard Group Women Network was launched at Standard Group PLC. And the mandate was to articulate the voice of women at the workplace and position them for impact and responsibility in the society, in the marketplace in general. But we were driven by what was happening in the media industry. We were not very comfortable with the way women were missing out on, career growth and job opportunities in terms of going up the ladder. Secondly, women are not exposed to training opportunities, and as a result, that really affected their job satisfaction and eventually even their growth in their different job levels. Again, we were looking at the facilities at the work, and we realized that a lot of things were not happening okay. We felt like women were being punished for going through completely normal biological processes, such as having a baby, nursing a baby. You really had to struggle to even find a place to So again, we were looking at issues to do with sexual harassment. Yes, it is an elephant, a big elephant in the room. And therefore we thought that this small network, it was a safe space where we would comfortably speak up and address these issues independently. And I'm just glad that the board gave us that opportunity to go ahead with that. And we were able to review our sexual harassment policy Like Rachel said, most of the sexual harassment policies are busy collecting dust in organizations. People just do them to tick off, yes, that they're just ticking off boxes, we're supposed to do this, we have this, but in terms of application or ensuring that policies are followed to the letter, then that's a big challenge. So the Women's Network gave us that opportunity to follow up, and true to our pursuit, we've been able to do quite a bit with that. Again, our network also focuses on balanced gender coverage in news, because we are in business of news, and I'm sure we are all in touch. We are all news people, newsmakers, or consumers of news. We see how that gender equality coverage is skewed. So for the benefit of this panel, I think I was listening to Rachel, and I realized that one of the things that media organizations need to work on, and that is what Christine actually asked, are we really ready to tackle sexual harassment? And for me, it is not a question of whether we are ready. It is a question of whether we are willing to deal with the consequences of not tackling sexual harassment. Because whether media organizations like it or not, sexual harassment, whether you're speaking about it or not, it is affecting the productivity of your employees, and that affects your bottom line. And that is the reality. So it is not a question of whether, it is a question of when. When are we going to start tackling issues related with sexual harassment? Having a policy is one thing. Having clear outline in that policy in terms of where is the victim supposed to report, how do they do it, what steps do they follow, what are the procedures that will happen to the perpetrator, do we let them go, all right? Does the employee, is the employee empowered enough to know that these are my rights as somebody who has been abused? These are my rights as somebody who has been accused of abuse, because everybody needs to know their right, because sexual harassment is a criminal offense. You could be jailed. So if the organization is not able to give you that clear-cut communication, then there's a problem. So information is key. For me, information, training, because we've had a couple of trainings on sexual harassment, and ladies and gentlemen, believe it or not, some people do not even know how sexual harassment looks like. Some people don't even know that they are being sexually harassed, which is unfortunate, all right? So for me, the most important thing that we need to do is to conduct training, and regular training, bearing in mind that people come and go. So you cannot say that you're conducting training and then you do it every decade, because that is what is happening. So this should be something that is enshrined in our policies at the organizations, at our workplaces. When you come in, when you're being inducted, you know exactly that that organization does not tolerate sexual harassment. When you're doing business with organizations, you also have to ensure that we have those clauses being part and parcel of our sexual harassment policy, because our business as media organizations is not that we go out there and we interact with people, all right? One thing that I was looking forward to seeing from the report was looking at the list of people who, the perpetrators of sexual harassment, and I won't be surprised, majority of them members of parliament, especially for our young women on television, the interns, because we become very vulnerable. Looking at the pressures that we have to deal with, we see how our media girls are dealing with quite a lot. So they will do anything for that cloud. So for me, information is key. Let us create enough awareness for our employees so that they fully understand what sexual harassment is. There's so much more about sexual harassment that we don't even know. I just learned the other day that even when somebody sends to a group WhatsApp something that makes you uncomfortable of sexual nature, you can accuse them of sexual harassment. Now, really, we barely started scratching the surface. So I'm very excited that we have Media Council of Kenya taking up this responsibility. And moving forward, I would wish that we speak from one spot, because sexual harassment will not happen to me because I work for Standard Group and she works for Citizen and somebody else works for KBC. It happens to anybody, including men. Sexual harassment happens to men. And that is one gray area that probably we need to have another discussion on. But above all, let us encourage, when the cases that were bound to, on the flip side, if one case is mishandled, you're going to silence thousands of voices. And that is the problem. We're trying to break that culture of silence. When you're able to break the culture of silence, we will speak up and we'll be able to end this vice. I think I'll stop there.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Quinta. That's really quite some discussion there, and you've challenged us quite a lot. I want to go to one of our online participants, Patience Nyange, who is also a member of the Media Council Board. Patience, if you're with us, I think you can proceed.
Good morning, Christine, Guku, and the rest. Thank you so much for this opportunity to be with you. Unfortunately, I'm in a place that I can't put on my video, but I'm about to follow the conversation. I'm on the road. So I wanted to say that there's so many, I've already put my comment on the side, but I said the many sexual harassment training, can you hear me? That are available online. And so it's important for all of us and to encourage all our employees to be able to read such things for themselves. And by doing so, it's very... Is there a problem, Kristen?
There are several or various online courses for employees on sexual harassment. And she also says, even before we wait for MCK or other institutions to train us on what is sexual harassment and how to go about it, let's also encourage ourselves to seek for that information, know about it in that way, so that when it happens, you know when to call it out. We also have to be very deliberate, and here I want to underline deliberate on her behalf, deliberate about protecting the young women joining the media houses, allow them to confide in us, let them know it happens, and educate them on the process involved in reporting of the same. And I think she's picking up from what Quinta said, that it needs to be in the employee's manual, so that when you do come into the institution, whether you're an intern or you are an employee, you are actually taken through what sexual harassment is. And there is a page which actually tells you, if you experience sexual harassment, this is how to go about it. But I also want to say that when you experience sexual harassment, sometimes it may be coming from externally. It could be inside the media house, the person attacking or the person who is making those sexual advances could be a colleague or somebody who is employed by the same institution. But sometimes it could be a source, a news source, an information source. Now, what is the procedure that you can follow if maybe the advances are being made by somebody who is outside of the media house? And, you know, those are processes that we need to actually put into our media houses and sensitize the journalists who are in-house. I want to come to you, Ken Bosire, to just give us a few more thoughts about, can this really work? You know, it's one thing to talk about it. It's second, it's a good thing to put it down on paper and say, this is what we believe, this is what we want to do. But coming from a newsroom, do you really think it can work?
Well, Christine, that's a very interesting question, but it begins, what the conversation we are having here today means that it is possible. We begin by discussing, sensitizing people, and the fact that we have those documents gathered in dust somewhere, that means there is already an admission that there's an issue, and it can work. It has worked. And what I think we need to do, I think the initiative by the Media Council is the right step in the right direction. We can start by developing what we call protocols, especially at the regulator level, telling that every media house that begins to be, that the way we do what we call credit journalists every year, that the first accreditation should be at the level of a media council or media house, accept public in signing that while we bring the journalists for accreditation, we want to submit to this protocol. And we can do it at that level, that the first, if there's any victim within the institution that there's silence, then we can also enjoin the media council, the particular media council, in that kind of prosecution or kind of thing. I think that's where it begins, so that we can obligate them to begin. Two, at another level, I think we need, like Rachel has just said, we need to have what we call champions within the newsrooms. And these champions, I'm thinking back at what many of us men shocked at what we call the Me Too movement. Many of us said it is targeting men. But I think within the media house, people need to speak out. And not just within the media house, but at the wider society. But it can begin from the point where the people, Dina mentioned that we'll put the numbers. I think it's time now for us to put the faces on those numbers. And once we begin to do this and tell them, one of the places like Quintas just mentioned is, I find a particular group of reporters, especially female reporters, who are attached to politicians. They're a very vulnerable group. And the media houses have unconsciously promoted by doing what we call celebrity television appearances. So they want to do all the things. I know they need to be prepared to be on screen, but some have created that what we are parading before you is not just a professional. We're also parading something to attract the eyeballs. So they begin from there. And we could begin to have a conversation around that one. But I want to mention a very interesting case that while traditionally people look at it as the females, the women who are going to get harassed, or juniors who are likely to get harassed, I came across a case where a senior editor was harassed, blackmailed through messages from a junior who was in a pack of people and there was an upcoming employment opportunity. She started writing messages and sharing those messages to her colleagues, indicating that there's something, a relationship between them and the boss. So that she's trying to keep these people and entrapping the boss to fall for her. And that was a very disturbing thing. But what happened is that that guy was harassed. He didn't know, because it had also been shared by other guys to other people, that everybody was looking at the newsroom that the boss has something to do with that girl. But it is an initiative by a junior who decided to start it so that she locks out everybody else and also puts that person in, blackmails the person. But the way it was tackled, because I happened to be part of it, to have been informed, what we did was to call that person in question and put the question straight. Did you write this? Yes. What prompted you? And we said, if we don't, then we're going to throw you off the building. And she confessed and said, yes, there was this thing. And she said, at a personal level, I have very deep feelings for this guy. And that he happens to be the guy, if he accepts, I'll get a job. So, but we counseled her, and we had to tackle it head on. And I found that very useful, because she was able to say, and then we told her, now tell you other people that you've been telling them you have something that you have all along lied. I found it almost a sickness. And it's something that we don't have to do. We need also psychotherapy kind of treatment, make available people who can help people speak about it and get through it. Because there are people who have taken off from the newsrooms, they don't want to come back to work. Now, that is where we need to do. It's a culture, a very deeply ingrained culture that we must begin to tackle head on. Like many cultures, they won't change overnight, but the fact that we speak about it, a Me Too kind of thing, the protocols that we are talking about, I think we make to disrupt this culture that I think is killing very many people. It applies to all across. And like one of the panelists mentioned that the men are shy to speak about it, because you say, what will men think about a man who refuses an advance? Are you a wimp of a man? Yeah, those are the kind of things. So we need to deconstruct that kind of thing from the mind of a man. And also the ladies in the newsroom where we are told, a lady is being told, man up. You know, those man up expressions, there are some of those things that promote this kind of biases. I think the conversation is right, and we need to go a step further and begin to put those instruments on the ground.
Thank you very much, Ken. We have one of our participants online, Gregory Murithi. Your hand is up. The floor is yours. Unmute your microphone, and then you can make your...
Thank you very much. I think everyone can get me well. My name is Murithi Gregory. I'm a journalist based in Meru County, working with Weru TV. And I have 2 points to raise here. But let me start first of all with the topic on the table today, right now. That is the topic of the women harassment. And I think if you check previously, what was happening is that in the times that we had women being harassed, whether they are journalists or the other disciplines. Thank you. So what I was saying is that, you see, when you're talking about the women harassment, if you check the previous, when we had such cases, you could see everybody, let's say even if it's online or verbally, you would see people defending the women harassment so much, and they would all come with one direction without wondering what circumstances led to that. But now if you check now, the trend has changed. You see now when a woman is harassed, you see now everybody starts now asking, what did she do? Maybe she had a right to be harassed. Maybe she did something wrong. Maybe circumstances that she forced the circumstances. You see, that is a trend that has changed now. And I think the best solution for this one could be having a very constructive thinking about what could have caused, because to solve the problem is to start with what caused the problem. You see, sometimes when you say literally, if your neighbor comes to steal your potatoes, you decide the best solution is just employ the neighbor to be your watchman. So such discussions like what we are having right now is engaging with those people, the perpetrators, the people who bring this, if they are the political leaders, if they are the head of those offices, if they are maybe the big men maybe in the place, if we can start such engagements rather than just maybe talking with the cocoon of those who will be harassed, talk with the people that we think they are the ones who harass the women, and that can give you the best solution, because they feel that whatever bring it, let's deal with it from what causes it first. Then from there now we can deal about those who have been harassed. And I think the law is very clear. Whether you are a journalist, whether you are any other person in the public, anyone, the law is very clear. There is the way the case needs to be followed. There is the prosecution, what have you. So I think for me, that is the best way to think critically or to handle it in a very sober way, rather than just coming maybe in one way. A whole wave is there to defend the women. And now we have the whole wave thinking that maybe she caused the problem. But having that critical thinking of how did they solve, how did they start? And maybe I can order ahead with the second concern that I had, or like, should I wait first of all you finish this one?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, so the other concern is about the journalist harassment. I don't know whether
from somebody who is online. And next I'm going to go to the team that is on the floor. Kevin Omolo says an empowered individual can stand up for his or her rights against violations. How can journalists be empowered to the point of standing up against these violations without fearing job loss? So he's just wondering, why is it that if a journalist stands up against such a violation, then they risk losing their job? Anyone on the floor who wishes to voice their... I'll give you my microphone.
I don't know whether mine is a question or more of a follow-up to what Ken was saying. So where do you want me to sit? Yeah. So mine was more of a concern, and it's from what Ken has said. Where do we draw the line from somebody who's genuinely interested in you? Because there's no rule in our newsrooms that says that we cannot intermarry or have relationships within the newsroom. So if I have a genuine interest in you and I start making advances, is that sexual harassment, surely?
Okay. Mariah, I think this is where many people get it wrong. Most organizations actually do not condemn having cordial relationships or romantic relationships with your colleagues. The difference, and I want to read this, is that sexual harassment is persistent, unwelcome. Which other word have I left out? Inappropriate, especially unwelcome. So if you comment about my outlook and the way certain parts of my body appear in a manner that appeal to you, and I say thank you with a smile on my face, that is okay. But if I tell you, excuse me, Mariah, I don't like the way you are talking to me, day one. The following day, we meet on the corridors, it is the same comment. I'm super. Yeah? Kuna vile, you know? Huh? Kuna vile, mali safi. Right? Huh? I'm like, Mariah, I mean, come on, I'm a married woman. Please, let's respect my space. Day 3, message. Msupa hiyo nguo inaweza. Sinikupeleke? Yes. And you're not stopping. And I continue telling you, please stop. This is making me uncomfortable. I don't need it. And you keep going and going and going. Now that is sexual harassment. But when I accept, willing buyer, willing seller, then there's no sexual harassment. Yes.
Okay. Maybe just picking up from Mariah stopped. Sorry, move this way. Oh, okay. So I'm saying being interested in a lady or in a man is very natural. But there's the very annoying, and as long as the man or the lady has already indicated that they're not interested, then you persist. I know now your next question would be like, so now if a lady is playing hard to get, we give up. I know probably that's what you want to say. And probably you'd say, then does that mean that every lady should accept advances on day one to make it, you know? But I'm just saying, it's just the level of discomfort on the other person, on the receiving end, that now draws the line, you know? And there was the other comment from the person from Meru. where you should ask why or what caused the sexual. There's a connotation of probably the person on the receiving end has brought it on themselves. Now, please, honestly speaking, I think it's very wrong to even have that kind of mentality. Not to say it doesn't happen, but if you even have it at the approach level, that, probably that intern or that lady or that man, dressed in a way that was suggestive and all that, I think even if it happens, then there's a way, probably there's a dress code that can correct that, or there's a way to approach that, but saying that would be a cause, I think that would be very, very wrong, even in terms of approach, maybe from a HR perspective. So yeah, that's what I wanted to say, at least on those two issues. Thank you.
Can I just add something?
I think at this point it's getting really hot. We'll just do one more comment, and
Okay.
then we'll come back so that we can close and make it really quick.
Yes, very quick. Thank you very much. My name is David Idei from KUJ. And just to follow up to what Quinta was speaking at, what Bosir was saying, I'm looking at a situation whereby we people who work in the media are not we are not knowledgeable. We are the most knowledgeable people because of the kind of work that we do. We are experts in different things. And if we write issues to do with violence, stories from other people, why should it be so difficult for us even to write our own stories? Another thing, let's look at the corporate sector. What are they doing? Many of them are now becoming signatories of the UN Global Compact. It has the 9 principles about labor issues. These are just a part of the global stakes that are high. But it does not mean we are short of laws. What it only means is we are afraid. The media is under siege. That's what I can say. We are afraid to talk about our own ills. And it simply shows that, let me take, for example, can the Media Council perhaps, just as what Bosire spoke about, can we have an annual report on these silent issues? Just the way we see the corporate sector report amongst themselves on some of these ills, how many cases were reported, what was done, measures that were done, and what a given institution or company, for in our case, which kind of, for a media house, what are they doing to ensure such cases do not occur, and how the perpetrators were punished or the measures that were done. And if a perpetrator was sacked, where did this perpetrator go to? Look at the capital markets. When they find somebody, they say, you'll not operate for a given duration of time. What about us, the media? Today, nimetoka hapa. Tomorrow, I have a safe space at another place. So these are some of the things which I think we also need to see how we can learn from what other people are doing and then pick up from there. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your contributions, the team that has joined us online and the people who are sitting in the room. Dina Ondari, I want to give you this opportunity to make some remarks, and then we'll come back to me, close and join the main meeting so that we can have our closing remarks. Okay, Kitui is dying to speak.
Yes,
Kitui, you have 30 seconds.
Sure, thank you so much. I wanted just to follow up on what my friend said about, because I've had this so many times, that, what if I'm interested? The question here is, most of this, sexual harassment comes from people who are above the person that, you are targeting. So there is nothing like, if I'm interested. If the person you're interested in is below you, it's unacceptable. You can go elsewhere and read as many policies as you want, but that is the bottom line. So let us not, cheat and say, if I'm interested, you can be interested, but let it be clear that, if you are, a senior person and the person you are, targeting is junior, it's unacceptable.
Thank you for that clarification. So can we do it outside? Just a thought. Can we do those expressions outside of the office workspace? But anyhow, Dina, Ondari?
Thank you, Christine. As I make my final thoughts, I would like to put it out that this journey will not be without challenges. You can be sure about that. And it starts with the people that we want to ask to implement its policies, to formulate and to implement. I've had an experience having approached a few media houses and a few media managers just to have a conversation to see what is the extent, how do they view this vice, and what is the extent of the practice in newsrooms. And so many of them are very guarded. They'll tell you, yes, we have them. And then you ask them, what are the numbers? You know, they're like, you're asking me so that you can go and plaster it on the Media Council website that this and this station is the one that is leading in sexual harassment. You know, stigmatization starts at that level up there. And we have to start by accepting and really practicing that sexual harassment is not a taboo subject. We can talk about it freely. We can confront it. I live for the day when I will hear a journalist calling me, just like when they call me when they're on the street and they've been hit by a stone, or a politician has broken their camera and they're calling and they saying, I need the assistance of the Media Council of Kenya to pursue this case. I look forward to that day when a journalist will call that as a source, be it a member of parliament, be it a member of the public, has inappropriately touched me or even made suggestive comments, so that then we are able to speak out freely, starting from the media managers. And that is why we are saying the next step should be having also a free conversation with media managers, not even journalists, so that then they can lead from the front, because the perpetrators are likely to be people who are higher up in the rank and not just the people that we are at the same level with. So let's be prepared for the challenges that we are going to face. And then Quinta spoke about media spaces. That is very important in this journey, because if I'm coming out to speak about harassment from my boss, how are you going to protect me? How are you going to ensure that my identity is protected? How are you going to ensure that I don't lose my job for speaking out against my boss? So these are the challenges that we need to mull. Even we are happy we are taking the bull by its horns, but we must also be prepared to face the challenges. Thank you, Christine.
Thank you very much, Dina. For sure, this is not going to be an easy journey. It will have stones, it will have valleys, it will have very steep hills. There'll also be crocodiles. But we can't be afraid to start taking the journey before we start. So let's just take that step of courage and start to move on. From this, I think I have seen us saying that it's time to look in and challenge the institutions that we have, so that we can come out of that institutional complacency over sexual harassment. We also need to verbalize the issue, internalize it, so that we can take action on that issue of sexual harassment. There's also the culture in newsrooms, which needs to be unlearned by all that are in those newsrooms, so that we can now begin to pick up a more proactive culture in the newsroom, where we have safe workspaces for all, for men and for women, for interns and for full-time employees. We also need to, come out of that casual approach to reported cases, so that if a case is reported, whether it is reported by a junior person or a senior person, it is taken seriously and steps are taken. Maybe we also need to develop defense skills for warding off sexual harassment attacks, such that we have enough courage to actually say, no, I do not appreciate that kind of a touch, or I do not appreciate that kind of a statement made towards me. We need to also look at the law and see how we can reinforce protection of media workers. And finally, just before finally, hold media houses to account on compliance in terms of sexual harassment. And probably one of the things we need to start doing is taking a sexual harassment index of the media houses, so that we see which one was the best at reinforcing or ensuring adherence to sexual harassment protection in their staff. And then finally, my colleague here, Ken Bosire, just whispered and said, perhaps we need to introduce a small section in the Complaints Commission which can listen to those kinds of complaints in the event that a media house is unable to sufficiently address that issue internally in their media houses. With that, I want to thank everybody who participated online and even those who participated in the room. Just one last thing that has been said by Kevin Omolo. Kevin Omolo is saying that perhaps one of the things that is really pushing sexual harassment is this belief and perception of African relationships, where a woman will say no 100 times, but really what she meant was just work harder at getting me. But, you know, we cannot let that come into the workspace. I think we need to keep the environment of the newsroom as a professional space where somebody can express themselves, do their work without interruptions. All other things, we can do them outside of the newsroom and not threaten them professionally with the stories they do and even with the kind of assignments that they get. With that, I want to thank everybody for their participation. Thank you very much. This has been really, really a heated one. Let's join the conference in the big room so that we can close the conference. Thank you very much and goodbye, everybody.